feel more confident in themselves and awaken powerful orgasms and full-bodied pleasure so that they can go out there and live life to the fullest and feel fulfilled and whole. You can find me at my website, which is mangalaholland.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as well, Mangala Holland. You'll find me there. Yeah.
So I know everyone probably stood up in their chair when they heard powerful orgasms.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know I did. I was like, what is that? Because I definitely need to learn more about that. So before we get to that point, give us the genesis of this journey for you. How did you start along this path and what got you into it?
Yeah. I'll keep this, it's a long story that I'll condense it. Back in my old life, I was working in England and I was working in corporate jobs. I was working in stockbrokers and legal firms, and I was also a DJ. So I was DJing 3 or 4 nights a week, playing in bars and clubs, playing house music. And I did that for a long time. And basically, I burnt out because I was having too much fun. And yeah, I had a really good social life, but yeah, I burnt out. And when I burnt out, I realized that actually I'd been partying way too hard for basically 2 decades. And essentially underneath all that, I realized that I actually didn't love myself and I hated my body and I felt very disconnected from my sexuality, and I hadn't had fulfilling relationships, and all I'd been having was a string of really bad one-night stands that left me feeling full of shame. And I realized that at the core of everything, I was just holding so much shame. And so I took a year off to go travel, and I did the classic go find yourself and did a lot of spiritual stuff on my journey. And I realized that that was it. At the core of it, I had to sort out this shame and the self-loathing and the hatred of my body and all of this stuff. And that led me into the Tantra world. And so I started exploring sacred sexuality and exploring what that meant. And I had some really profound breakthroughs within that environment. And this is where I started discovering powerful orgasms for myself. And it was like, oh my God, I want to shout this from the rooftops. I want everyone to know that they're capable of having these incredible, mind-blowing cosmic experiences. It was like nothing I'd ever had before. But at the same time, the environment I was in Thailand by this point, that environment was super unhealthy, and there was a lot of manipulation of women and a lot of really horrible dogmatic stuff about what it means to be masculine, what it means to be feminine, and it was super harmful. And so I called out a lot of abuse in that community, and as I left that community, I was like, I want to offer something for women and vulva owners that is safe, that they can learn this stuff without the predators, because there were a lot of predators in that environment. And so that was the fuel for me to do what I'm now doing. And I've been doing this, I've been teaching sexuality for 10 years now. I've got an international client base of amazing people all over the world, and helping them become fulfilled. And it's awesome.
I know for me, I had to learn how I wanted to represent myself in the bedroom. Because it's not something you can go to your mom and dad say, hey mom, hey dad,
Yeah.
can you show me some of your favorite positions in the bedroom? Right? Because they're going to be like, you're too young for this type of conversation. Go back to your room, read your Bible, do your Hail Marys, and off you go, right?
Yeah.
And then I had to learn my body first. And then I had to become comfortable in my body first. When you mentioned that, because you had a string of relationships and what some young people call situationships these days, right? You realize that, hey, I don't want this anymore. Some of the clients that you deal with, when they get to you, are they at the point where they don't want it anymore, or are they still going through those toxic relationships, one night stands? They're still running through that whole gauntlet of roller coaster emotions.
That's a really, really good question. I would say most of them have got to the point it's like, okay, that way of doing things isn't working. Or like a lot of my clients are 40s and 50s and kind of over. And so it's like what worked for us in our 20s doesn't work for us as we get older, and we can't override things with hormones and alcohol and whatever worked. We used to just go out and pick people up in clubs and take them home, and it's different as we get older. But you touched on something really key when you said learn in my body and feel comfortable in my body, and this is the key of all of it. And it's so much of what we see in movies and in porn is performative, and it's not realistic, and it's make believe, and real life isn't necessarily like that. It can be awkward, it can be clumsy, there can be more humor, it can be very, very different. And unfortunately, people see what they see in movies and porn and think, oh, I'm not like that, therefore there must be something wrong with me. And so I really, really want to help people find their authentic selves, because that's what's confident, that's what's sexy. Yeah.
I went on a date years back, and the reason why I bring this up is you mentioned performative, and we hit it off. It was a good time, couple of dates, and back then there was always this like 3-date rule, right? So I'm feeling kind of good. It's a third date. I'm like, terrain, it's about to go down, right? So after the date, we go back to her place and we had the conversation, and then things started happening. And as we're getting into the mood, I guess she was feeling kind of anxious is the word. So she accidentally headbutt me. And it hurt. And I was like, God, and it kind of like ruined the mood in a way, right? So we talked about it, we laughed, and then a couple of days later, we went on date number 4, right? And then we found ourselves in the same situation. She headbutts me again.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm thinking at this point, it's like an awkward response to the situation, right? Because who gets headbutted twice when they're trying to do it? Then I started thinking, is it me? Am I leaning in too close? And I bring that up because you mentioned it's awkward, it's clumsy. How do you talk someone through that where they're like, hey, Mangala, I just headbutted someone twice when I'm trying to get intimate with them. I don't want to do it a third time.
Yeah, I always say there's something there about relaxing more. It sounds like, just like that because that's that core of it was like feeling like I've got to get this right, especially like the second time if you had that happened the first time. There's so much pressure that we put on ourselves, that it's got to go a certain way, that it's got to be right, and that this is a new person, and I want them to be happy, and I don't want to let them down. I don't want I don't want to let myself down, and all of this stuff. It brings in so much expectation and so much pressure. And I think humor is a great thing. It absolutely can just lift everything so much. And I think slowing things down, relax, take it easy, making sure you're not in your head, but that you're in your body. And this is something that so many of my female clients come to me with. They're like, I'm just feel like I'm in my head all the time, or things will go all right, and then something happens, and then they go into their head, and then they can't come back from it, and then they feel like they're uptight, and that can be totally undone and worked out completely.
Are there practices that the women you work with are given, or is it like more of a conversation, or is it both?
It's both. Yeah. So my work is a mixture of coaching and also embodiment, so that they can get and simple movement practices that you can do in your daily life that take 10 minutes and you can do fully clothed, but just doing small things regularly, it helps you get out of your head and into your body. And that means then when it comes to being intimate, it's so much easier because you're not stuck in your head all the time. And also it helps you to feel more pleasure. So maybe what felt like a 4 out of 10 starts to become more like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. So it's like turning up the volume on that pleasure that you can feel in your body. And that's really important for orgasms.
I wonder how many people have a rating system on themselves. For example, if you and I were intimate, I can say that it was a 5 out of 10, and you may think it's a 6 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10. But that's our overall experience. But then I can say that my experience in it as an individual now was 7. I really enjoyed what she did. I enjoyed the connection, things like that, where you're left wanting, right? That the overall experience was this score, but what you felt was a little bit lower. Is that a type of conversation that you have with your clients as well?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly for people who've been in long-term relationships, like there becomes this, I mean, habits get created and it can end up being same all the time, which then, the passion diminishes or the spark gets less, or one partner just starts to feel like this isn't doing it anymore, and it starts to get a bit sticky. So it is something that comes up, um, or just, or often, to be honest, with my female clients, it's like sometimes they feel like they're going through the motions to please their partner, and it becomes all about their partner's pleasure and their partner's orgasms, and they're left feeling like, I don't know what works for me. This is all I know is this isn't working for me. And so I'm not a couples therapist or coach, but the work I do with women helps them rediscover their own pleasure. Also through a lot of giving them the tools to explore self-pleasure in a new way. So then they know what works for them. And we work on how to communicate that with a partner without their partner feeling like they're getting it wrong as well, which is really important.
What are some of the fears that women may have in the bedroom?
Oh gosh. Some of the, and this is where where I say about getting out of performative stuff, because often I'll hear things like, they're worried about how they look or how they think they look. They're worried about being judged, and that can be being judged for not being expressive enough or being too loud and being too much. It's like we're never quite hitting the spot right. We're either too much or we're not enough. And they worry about, is their partner enjoying this? Are they going to leave them if you don't give them enough sex? Like there's all of these things, and it's the core of many people's insecurities. Is I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Or my orgasms take too long. That's another one that crops up a lot. And I'd like to reframe that as like, what if it's okay that your orgasm takes as long as you like and you enjoy all of it and take up that time and space? And if it takes an hour, good for you. There's nothing wrong with that. That should be celebrated, not feeling like there's something wrong with you. Yeah.
Should that be, actually, let me rephrase this question. How should we evaluate the sexual experience? Because some people will evaluate it as, if I don't have an orgasm, it wasn't good. Versus some other people, as you mentioned, it's more of the connection. I enjoyed my time, orgasm or not. So how should we evaluate the sexual experience?
It's a really interesting question. And I think it's about, more than anything, it's about the heart. It's about the connection. It's about the connection between two humans and what gets created, and the sum of the whole being bigger than the parts. I think that's the phrase, where it's like you put two people together and then something bigger emerges from that. I really believe in taking the pressure of orgasm off the table, because if that feels like hard work for one party, then putting all the pressure on that is going to make that orgasm even harder to experience. So it's like, okay, instead, how did you feel emotionally? How do you feel about the physical connection, about the pleasure, about the enjoyment of the whole experience, and what would you like more of? What if you're evaluating, then rather than putting numbers on it, it's like, what worked really well? What would you like more of? What next time, what else would you like, or what could we do differently? And start to, rather than just putting numbers on it, which could really make somebody feel quite insecure. It's like, how do we bring out the best in each other? Yeah.
And when you mention like the different positions that you can do in different things, is it because I know you mentioned sometimes we get in our own head and we worry ourselves into it just being performative, right? Is it a, a question of I want variety in my mind more so than the physical, or is it a mixture of both saying that I need to make sure that mentally I am there as well as physically I need to deliver as well?
Oh, I love this. And I would say more than anything, it's never about techniques. It's presence is more important than anything else. So mentally, you being there, being present with your partner, them knowing that you're with them and that you're following what's happening and you're not checked out, or you're not just focused on you getting off, but you're responding to their needs in the moment and attuning to them and co-creating with them. That is a game changer. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
For those who are watching along on Facebook and YouTube and my social media, please follow and subscribe for more wonderful conversations with my new best friend, Mangala, and we will be back for more. Stay